All right, so yesterday when we multiplied, we did our 2 by 2s times 2 by 2s. We could multiply them because they were exactly the same size. But the rule is for multiplying matrices, the number of columns in the first matrix has to be the same as the number of rows in the second matrix. Okay, the number of columns in the first has to be the same as the number of rows in the second. So for example, if we were to multiply a 2 by 3 and a 3 by 1, okay? So the number of columns in the first matrix has to match the number of rows in the second matrix. Those two numbers have to match. If those don't match, we cannot multiply, and you would just say not possible. And then in the blue, it tells us the order of our product. That means what size our answer is when we multiply is going to be the leftover parts. So the number of rows in the first matrix and the number of columns in the second. Okay, so the two middle numbers have to match. And then your answer is going to be the size of the leftover parts. So if I were to multiply a 2 by 3 and a 3 by 1, my answer would be a 2 by 1, if that makes sense. Okay. So I just have a few examples here to let's just look at and see, can we multiply? And if so, what size our answer is going to be. Other than that, the process is going to be exactly the same. If this would respond to me, would be helpful. There we go. Okay, so like look at question number 1. It wants to know if I can multiply matrix A and matrix B. Matrix A is a 2 by 3. Matrix B is a 3 by 4. And again, according to the rules, the number of columns in the first matrix has to match the number of rows in the second. As long as those match, then yes, you can multiply. Okay, so yes, we can multiply these. And then it wants to know the order of the product, meaning what is the size of the answer of this. And again, that's going to be the leftover parts. So what size would this be? What numbers are a 2 by 4? Okay, and then that'll also help us when we set this up to start multiplying and make sure we can double check what size our answer is. So go ahead and answer questions 2 and 3. Yes or no, can you multiply or not? If so, if yes, then what size is your answer going to be? So looking at number 2, it says A is a 1 by 5, B is a 5 by 6. Am I able to multiply those two? Yes, okay. And then what size is my answer going to be? 1 by 6. Yep, the leftover parts there. And then what about number 3? A is a 2 by 3, B is a 2 by 3. They're the same size, but again, the number of columns in the first has to match the number of rows in the second. Would I be able to multiply those? No, okay. And so again, when you get to that process, once you check to see if you can multiply, if you can't, you just say not possible, just like we did when we couldn't add or subtract. Ready? All right, if you will, take a minute, write down those two matrices. We're going to decide first, can we multiply? If we can, then we'll go through exactly the same process as we did yesterday. Sometimes it's just a little bit longer because you have more terms. Okay, so let's start with the sizes. What is the size of my first matrix? 2 by 3. And what is the size of my second matrix? 3 by 2. Okay, so again, we're going to check. Can we multiply? Yes. And then what size is my answer going to be? 2 by 2. Okay, so just keep that in mind. When we get an answer, we should have 2 rows and 2 columns. Is everybody good there? Okay, I'm going to erase that so I have time or space to label everything. So just like yesterday, now that we know we can multiply, we also know our answer. I'm going to write it up in the corner. Should be a 2 by 2. We're going to do just like we did yesterday. Let's label the rows in our first matrix. So R1 and R2, row 1, row 2. And then we're going to label the columns in the second matrix, column 1, column 2. If this will catch up with me, it's probably not going to work right. I put a C1 above the first column and a C2 above the second one. It's just not seeming to work for me today. Let's try this one more time. Okay, so you can see where I put the C1 and the C2 above the columns in the second matrix. So again, we multiply each row by each column. So we're going to go row 1, column 1 first. I'm going to do it up here too, just because I like to be able to point. Bless you. And we are going to go row 1, column 1. So just like we did yesterday, again, starting with the first terms. First term in the first row, first term in the first column. What do I get when I multiply those? 6. And then remember, we go across with our left hand, we go down with our right hand to the next terms in each row and column, and we multiply those. What's 0 times 1? 0. Remember, we're adding it. And then this time we have an extra term, so we're going to go across and down again. And we're going to multiply those. And 6 times 2 is 12. So I'm going to add those together. 6, 0, and 12 gives me 18. And we already know that our answer is going to be a 2 by 2. So it's going to have 2 rows. And it's going to have 2 columns. And this number goes row 1, column 1. So again, we're going to multiply. I'm just doing it again on here. 2 times 3, that gives me 6. And then I'm going to go 0 times 1 across and down. That gives me 0. And then I'm going to go 6 times 2, which gives me 12. And that gives me 18, which in my answer, come over here, row 1, row 2, column 1, column 2 is going to go there. Ever see how it's basically the same once you figure it out? Okay. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go row 1, column 2 this time. So we're going to start 2 times 5. That's 10. Then we're going to go across and down, multiplying those. 0 times 0 is 0. And then across and down one more time. 6 times negative 6 is, and then if I add 10 plus 0 plus negative 36, that's going to give me negative 26. This is not wanting to, and that goes row 1, column 2. And then remember, after you do row 1 by each of your columns, you're going to go row 2 by each of your columns. So go ahead, if you haven't already, go ahead and do row 2 by column 1. First term in each. So row 2 times column 1, negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. And then we're going to go across and down. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And then across and down one more time. 0 times 2 is 0. And that's going to give me a total of course it did. We'll just go. Okay, sorry. Try it again. That's negative 3. That's negative 2, and that's 0. Which gives me negative 5. And then we're going to do a row 2, column 2. Starting at the beginning, we multiply. Okay, across and down, and across and down. So negative 5 plus 0 is just going to give me negative 3. And I ended up with a 2 by 2 like we said we were going to. Everybody okay with that? So once you get it set up, other than that, it's all the same. Let me put a new one up. I want you to try this one after we talk about what size our answer is going to be. All right, go ahead, do the sizes of each one to let's check and see if we can actually multiply.